Do you think Mark Carney, do you support him? Is he the right guy to be leading Canada at this point with his, I don't know, he talks about climate justice and climate this, climate that. I don't know. He definitely is a zealot.
Well, folks, we all know the answer to that question is no, he is not the right person for the job. But let's listen to what Doug Ford had to say, because this guy has been clearly drinking the Kool-Aid.
He believes in building pipelines all the way east, all the way west, another one south, and another one north.
Now, either Doug Ford knows something that we don't know, or he didn't hear Mark Carney when he said this.
How do you reconcile keeping Bill C-69 with your plans to build infrastructure in Canada? Do you plan to repeal Bill C-69?
We do not plan to repeal Bill C-69, to answer your question directly. What we have said and made very clear 10 days ago, formally with the First Minister's meeting, is that we will move for projects of national interest to remove duplication in terms of environmental assessments and other approvals.
Now, if you're not willing to repeal Bill C-69, I would say that you're not willing to build any new pipelines, especially here in Canada. However, an article from a few weeks ago has just surfaced, tying Brookfield, his old employer, to being the front runner of acquiring a pipeline in the US. And you can see that here in the Pipeline and Gas Journal. Brookfield emerges as frontrunner to acquire 5,500-mile Colonial Pipeline in a $10 billion deal. Now, it is quite interesting to see this $10 billion amount again, because in yesterday's video, I linked Brookfield Asset Management to this Maple Fund that they were trying to create, and it says that they were looking for $10 billion from the federal government. Now, in this article, it says Brookfield Asset Management is emerging as the front runner to acquire Colonial Pipeline. But then later on, it says Colonial Pipeline is owned by the Canadian Pension Fund, Caisse de dépôt et placement de Quebec, CDPQ. And this all gets tied back to Mark Carney, Brookfield, and yesterday's video, because Brookfield is trying to create a super entity of the largest pension funds in Canada. And that's what the article yesterday was about, inside Brookfield's pitch for a $50 billion Maple Fund, or they're calling it the Maple 8. And later on in the article, it says, after reviewing the pitch documents, the proposed targets make sense within a limited universe of Canadian investments. The trouble is that the Maple 8 pension funds don't want to concentrate too much money in one country because they want to diversify their risks, and the investments they do make in Canada have to be more lucrative than the others available elsewhere. They're choosing to invest abroad not just for diversification reasons, but also because they get higher yields on similar assets in other parts of the world. Creating a list of appealing Canadian investments doesn't address either problem. Now, the big issue which comes now is the fact that Mark Carney is in the federal government, but this might play to their hand because it says, investors would also want much more detail than the documents provided on what the federal government would get in exchange for its $10 billion stake. If the government had a say, that could make a big difference on how the funds are used. Well, guess who is in the government now? Mark Carney. It also goes on to say, what type of assets does the federal government want to be seen investing in? If politicians got to sign off on the Maple Fund investments, that could create additional challenges. Politicians' priorities change, especially when an election puts different ones in power. But currently the one that is in power is the one that aligns with you, because in the earlier in the article, it states that the presentation from Brookfield outlines hundreds of billions in dollars worth of investment opportunities in Canada. Many of those align with the current federal government's stated priorities. Well, who is the current federal government? It is the Liberal Party. But take a look at this part. Brookfield and the pension funds would have seats on the fund's board. It doesn't mention one for the government. Well, why does it need it? You have the head of Brookfield, the chair there, or the former chair, I guess I should say, and now he's the head of the government. So I'm sure he'll find a seat somewhere. But right here it says, Brookfield describes the proposed fund as a collaboration with Canada's biggest pension fund managers, listing 9 of them in the deck. And look at number 2, Casa de Dépôt et Placement de Québec, CDPQ. And down here it says Brookfield and the investors named in the documents have about $3.3 trillion in combined assets under management. None of the investors responded to the Logic's request for a comment by publication time. Now, this article was back in September of 2024, but this report that just came out about the pipeline being acquired was done in March 20th. However, they had been already trying to acquire this for a while now, because in this article that was on Transport Topics, it said that the investment firm is seen as the strongest contender after final offers were submitted the week of March 10th. But Bloomberg reported in October that Colonial is weighing options, including the potential sale. And we actually know that this has been going on for even longer, because there was another article written by Reuters saying exclusive, some Colonial Pipeline owners eye stake sales at $10 billion plus company valuation. And this was done back in June 17th of 2024. So Mark Carney has had his grubby little fingers all over this plan, it seems like, for quite a while. And this is why we say that this guy is so corrupt. He's slimy, he's dishonest, he's extremely arrogant. I don't know if he thinks that he could just get away with all this stuff. But this man cannot continue to lead our country or even stay in power. Now, luckily, with the way things went today on Liberation Day from Trump, it may have potentially thrown a little bit of a wrench in Mark Carney's spokes, because these guys have just been fear-mongering over and over again about Trump, the tariffs, all that kind of stuff, but he didn't impose anything new. However, when you listen to Doug Ford here on the CNBC, he just makes a complete fool of himself, because if all they did was remove the tariffs on America, it seems like all of this would have disappeared.
And, again, he believes he's supporting Americans. He said he was going to create jobs, create wealth, reduce inflation. It's worked the total opposite. Inflation.
But do you think it's fair that you have tariffs on a whole number of products?
That's right. And we'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off. We are not the problem, Andrew. Do you know the problem is? China's the problem. And he's taking a blind eye to China as they continue to build their critical mineral mass. We have all the critical minerals that our great neighbors need. We have the energy that our great neighbors need.
I just want to go back for a moment. If, in fact, you're prepared to take your tariffs off, why wouldn't you have that negotiation and that conversation now before any tariffs get put in place?
Well, we've had this conversation for over the last month. We don't want tariffs. We have another $65 billion worth of tariffs to launch today. That's the last thing we want to do, because it's just, again, it's going to hurt both countries. It's going to hurt American workers. That's the last thing I want.
Andrew meant take the other ones off, not the ones you're launching today. The ones that you already got.
You're saying you take all your tariffs off. I'm saying
we will take them all. That's right.
Then why is that not? I guess my question is, why has all of that not already happened? And does President Trump know that you'd be prepared to do that?
He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're willing to take these tariffs off, like in the next minute, if he said he's taking their tariffs off.
Now, I'm not sure if you found that as painful to watch as I did, but clearly Doug Ford was missing the whole point of what they were saying. They were trying to point out the fact that Canada already had tariffs on the U.S., and Trump was simply responding to that, saying, okay, we'll just put tariffs on you because you have tariffs on us. It's unfair. They want to know, if that was the case, and if that was why he was putting tariffs on you, why didn't you just remove all the tariffs, like the tariffs you have on dairy and all that, et cetera, et cetera. And he just is thinking that they're talking about the current tariffs that Trump put on, because he goes on to defend himself saying, hey, we didn't start this trade war. We weren't the first ones to impose the tariffs.
How much of this then is some kind of theatrical dance between both yourself, frankly, and the administration? I mean, it sounds to me like if you're prepared to take yours off right now, he should be prepared to take whatever we would implement, and we wouldn't have this conversation. What I can't figure out is whether both of you are waiting so that you can say that you've both won in some way.
Andrew, let me be very clear. We didn't start this tariff war. You know, a tariff on Canada is a tax on Americans. Simple as that.
But you've already got tariffs, Mr. Premier. You say you didn't start it. You already have all these existing tariffs that you're willing now to take off. We're putting them on today, right?
Yeah, that is right. And this idea of taking off the tariffs or putting a pause on the tariffs, all that, this is something that Pierre reiterated when he was in Toronto today. He did 2 smaller events, and one of them was a radio show with Ben Mulroney, and this is what he said was his plan to deal with Trump.
An immediate response to Donald Trump, as well as an after-election response.
Yes.
So drill down on those 2 things for me.
After the election, we got to figure out how to solve this, because this insanity cannot go on. So what I'm proposing is this. The CUSMA deal, the trade deal we have now, it has to be renegotiated by the end of 2026, by I think it's summer of 2026. Why would we wait?
Yeah.
Why would we have this kind of revolving chaos for another year and a half? Let's nail down a deal.
So the first foray into foreign affairs by you go right down there.
I call up the president, say, look, suspend tariffs both ways, and let's set a tight deadline to renegotiate the deal on both economics and security. The deal would do 3 things as far as I'm concerned. 1, it has to maintain our sovereignty. We're going to control our country, our dollar, our laws, our health care, our water, all of that. Secondly, we need tariff-free access to the American market, which we should grant in return. And third, we should do our part on national defense. And the Americans, on this point, they're not wrong to say that Canada needs to rebuild its armed forces. And I'm going to say to the Americans, the more you trade with us, the more money we will have for our military. We'll do our part. You will not have to carry our weight on defense. And that's how we nail down a deal that can put this insanity to rest and bring calm and growth and strength to our country.
Now that to me sounds like a solid idea and something a leader should be doing, unlike what Mark Carney did, where he just let this relationship stew for like 3 weeks before he finally reached out. Pierre says he'll do this immediately. He'll buckle down. We'll talk about the tariffs, remove them completely, so both of us can be happy in this relationship and we have no more hardships. But somebody who had an issue with this was Jagmeet Singh, because at his press conference today, this is what he had to say.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Singh. We heard from the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, today saying that he would propose renegotiating NAFTA, CUSMA, USMCA earlier. There's supposed to be a review in 2026. What do you think of that proposal?
Well, and I think, is an important question. I reject that approach. We have an agreement signed by the very same president who's now saying, in effect, to tear it up, who's now broken that agreement. What's the guarantee that he would follow a next agreement if we cave on this one? I think it sets a very bad precedent. It's a bad negotiating precedent. How do we trust somebody who negotiated and signed an agreement and then says preemptively, without any reason, without any provocation, they're just going to tear it up unilaterally? That does not set the ground for a good negotiating table. So no, I don't think we should say we're going to renegotiate it earlier. There's been no reason for it, no cause for it. We should go to 2026 and we should fight back, get all these tariffs removed.
So Jagmeet says we have to fight to get the tariffs removed, but what Pierre just proposed was that we get the tariffs removed completely by having a sit-down conversation and renegotiating. I understand Donald Trump did agree to the old CUSMA agreement, but now things have changed. He's probably realizing, hey, we didn't really get that great of a deal because tariffs are still put on us in terms of dairy and all that stuff, as I mentioned earlier. And here Pierre is saying, let's remove the tariffs completely from both sides. So what would Donald Trump have to potentially rip up or not agree to? I think that this would be the best approach to moving forward with the Trump administration. But I guess, what do I know? I'm not a politician, guys. And on that note, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about this whole situation? Brookfield, the pipeline, the tariff situation that happened / didn't happen. Let me know, as always, in the comment section below. If you can, hit the subscribe button, would really help the channel grow. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.